Let's talk about some quick tips to chord substitution. And a chord substitution in essence is when we take one chord and we substitute it out for another chord to create more of a harmonic interest. Now, in order to do this, the chord that we're using to substitute must share some common tones of the previous chord as well as support the melody. So it can't clash and it has to share some of the chord tones. Now, what I want to share with you is some quick and easy substitutions, especially when we're talking about the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. In lots of hymns, we'll often see those main chords in each hymn. And a lot of times, to create more variety, as a pianist, we will substitute the 1 or the 4 or the 5 to give more of a hymn and harmonic variety. So today I'm going to talk about substitutions for the 1 chord and give you just a few brief chords to substitute it out. Now, in order to do this, here's a few things you need to understand. You have to understand the diatonic chords to each key. So for instance, if I'm in the key of C, I have 7 different chords available in that key based on the scale. For instance, my 1 chord is C, that is a major chord. My 2 chord is a minor chord, and that is D minor. My 3 chord is E minor, that's the 3rd step in the scale. My 4 chord is a major chord, that is F major. My 5 chord is G, that is my dominant chord. It's gonna lead me back to my 1. You'll see it often in hymns at the end of phrases. And then my 6 chord is a minor chord, and then 7 is diminished. Now, we're gonna use the first 6 and talk about those. And today we're going to talk about substituting the 1 chord by using a few of the minors as well as a major. Hymn, Come Thou Fount, and I played it strictly based on the chords that are in the hymn book. And in Come Thou Fount, we are playing in the key of D flat, and as I'm playing in that, my 1 chord is D flat major, my 4 chord is G flat major, and my 5 chord is A flat major. And again, based on my scale, my D flat scale, if I were to play through it, every scale has a chord that goes along with it, and those are called diatonic chords. So my 1 chord is D flat major, 2 chord is E flat minor, 3 chord is F minor, and so on. It'll keep working its way up. Now, if I want to create some harmonic interest, instead of always playing the 1 chord, let's talk about chords that we can substitute for the 1 chord. Now, remember, chord substitutions have to share some of the chord tones of the chord you're substituting as well as support the melody. So if I'm looking at the chords diatonically in the key of D flat, and as I look at those, I notice, okay, here's my D flat chord. Here are the chord tones that make up that chord. What other chords share similar chord tones? So here's something I want to show you. If I take away the D flat, and I just use the top 2 notes, these 2 notes correspond with the minor 3, which is F minor. With that in mind, they would share some of the chord tones of the D flat major chord. Now also, if I added the D flat major to that chord, now notice what it creates. It creates a major 7 chord. Now, because of that, my 3 minor is a great substitute for the 1 chord. Now again, it has to support the melody, so we have to watch for the melody. We'll show that in a minute. Now if I take away the top note and I add a 3rd below it, the minor 6, B flat minor, is also a substitution for D flat major. Now if I add that B flat to a D flat major chord, notice what chord it creates. It creates a B flat minor 7. So if you notice how those chords work, they are great substitutions for the one chord. Now here's another beautiful substitution for the one chord that I love to throw in, and that is the 4 major. Now notice if I play the 4 chord, which is G flat major, if I add the notes of my D flat chord on top of that, I already have D flat, now I'm going to add F and A flat. Notice what chord I now have. This is a G flat, here's your major 7, and then we add one more third. This is a G flat 9 chord, which means because they share a lot of the chord tones, I can substitute the 4 chord for the 1 chord. Now, let me show you how this works in action. So my first measure, my pickup measure, there's my pickup measure. My first measure has a 1 chord. Now I can play the 1 chord, or I can play it on beat 1 and play a B minor on beat 2, and then a G flat major on beat 3. So let's put that in action. Substitute this next one for a B flat minor. Now I'm going to substitute for a G flat major. Now for the next one, B flat. Now a lot of substitutions, you can kind of know which substitution will work based on the melody line. Now, if you notice, I did not throw in the minor 3. Let's listen to if I tried to throw in the F minor. So you can hear how right away that clashes. And that's because the melody note is not going to be supported by that chord. Now, is there another place I could try to throw it in? Well, there's another option that we could try to do. The melody line, "Come thou fount of," the word every is an F and an A flat. So we could try to do an F minor there. Let's try it. Now, if I were to play this hymn with those substitutions that we talked about for the 1 chord, again, which are the minor 3, the minor 6, and the 4, I'm going to go ahead and play the whole song again with substitutions. I'm going to use more than just those 3 to substitute, but for now, those are the basics that we talked about. Listen to the difference in sound that it creates.